Okay, so if I say the name Xerxes, I want you to be completely honest with me. What is the very first image that hits your brain? Don't overthink it.
I think for about 90% of people listening right now, it is undeniably Rodrigo Santoro from the movie 300.
Oh, absolutely.
You know the look
Yep.
I'm talking about? 9 feet tall,
Yeah.
voice like thunder, gold body paint, piercings in places that look incredibly painful.
And sitting on that massive mobile throne carried by slaves, the ultimate god king vibe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is a fantastic piece of cinema villainy. I mean, you just love to hate him. He is the perfect foil for the rugged underdog Spartans. But here's the problem.
What's that?
That image has done a really, really good job of erasing the actual human being.
Mm.
It turns a complex historical figure into, well, a cartoon monster.
And that's our mission today. We are going to strip off the gold paint and the nose rings and look at Xerxes. Xerxes the Great, as he actually was. Because when you dig into the sources, you find out that the guy who ruled the Achaemenid Empire from 486 to 465 BC wasn't just some screaming tyrant.
No, not at all.
He was an administrator, a builder, a religious devotee, and honestly, a guy dealing with a surprising amount of family drama.
It's a soap opera on an imperial scale.
Yeah.
And we have to remember the canvas we are painting on here. He controlled a territory that stretched from India to Ethiopia. This was the superpower of the ancient world.
The absolute undisputed superpower. So we've got a massive stack of sources on the table today. We have the classic Greek historians like Herodotus, who we should note are basically writing war propaganda for the other side.
Right, that's a huge grain of salt you have to take with everything he says.
But we also have modern scholarship, archaeological records from Persepolis, and even some biblical connections.
Right, and the goal is to see if we can find the middle ground.
Hmm.
Was he the hubristic madman the Greeks described? Or was he a misunderstood stabilizer of a massive empire who just happened to lose a very famous naval battle?
Let's start with the origin story, because in monarchies, usually succession is simple. You're the eldest son, you get the crown, everyone bows. But with Xerxes, it wasn't that clean, was it?
Not at all. And understand why Xerxes gets the job. You have to look at his family tree. It is a tangled web. His father is Darius the Great, obviously a titan of Persian history in his own right.
Right.
But his mother is the real power player here.
Atossa.
Her name was Atossa, and she's the key.
Okay, so why is she the linchpin?
Because Atossa was the daughter of Cyrus the Great.
Ah, the founder. The
Yeah.
George Washington of the Persian Empire.
Precisely. See, Darius was a great king, but he wasn't a direct descendant of Cyrus. He seized power after a chaotic period, a crisis with a Magian usurper. He came from a collateral branch of the family. So while he had the power, he needed legitimacy. He needed that direct link to the founder.
So he marries into the bloodline.
He marries Cyrus's daughter, Atossa. That's a classic move. Marry into the bloodline you want to claim.
And by doing that, he cements his own rule.
Exactly. So when Xerxes is born, he is the first biological bridge between the new dynasty of Darius and the founding dynasty of Cyrus. He represents the unification of the empire's history.
Okay, so he has the right blood. But didn't Darius have other kids? I assume a king of kings has a busy household.
He did. He had an older son named Artabazan. And Artabazan had a very solid argument for the throne.
Which is what?
He said, I am the eldest son of Darius. By all laws of nature and custom, the throne is mine.
That sounds standard. I was here first. So how does Xerxes jump the line?
He used a legal argument that historians call being born in the purple.
Born in the purple. I've heard that phrase, usually regarding Roman emperors or Byzantine rulers. What did it mean in 500 BC Persia?
Well, the argument was incredibly technical. Artabazan was born when Darius was just a nobleman, a subject of the previous king. Xerxes, however, was the first son born after Darius had actually become the king of kings.
Ah, so the argument is Artabazan is the son of a subject, but Xerxes is the son of a king.
Exactly. It feels like a lawyer finding a loophole in the contract. Technically, your father wasn't king when you were born, so you're just a commoner's kid.
That is a total technicality.
It is. And there's a funny, almost cinematic anecdote that Xerxes was actually coached on this argument by an exiled Spartan king named Demaratus, who was living in the Persian court at the time.
A Spartan helping a Persian become king? That is deeply ironic considering what happens later.
It is. Demaratus apparently told him, in Sparta, the son born during the reign takes precedence. Xerxes loved that logic. But while the legal argument was clever, modern scholars, people like Richard Stoneman, they think the real deciding factor was simply Atossa.
Mom pulled the strings.
She was the daughter of Cyrus. She held immense influence in the court. Darius knew that picking her son would lock down the dynasty's legitimacy and prevent any questions about his right to rule. It was the safe political move.
And it worked.
It did. So in 486 BC, as Darius is preparing his tomb and getting ready for a campaign in Egypt, he officially named Xerxes his successor.
And the brother, Artabazan. Does he launch a civil war? Because that's usually what happens in these stories.
Surprisingly, no. The transition is incredibly smooth. It speaks to how stable the empire was at that moment and how powerful Atossa was. Xerxes steps up, no one draws a sword, and he begins his reign.
So he secures the bag, but let's look at his qualifications. We tend to think of these ancient kings as spoiled brats who just inherit the world and sit around eating grapes.
Right.
But the source material, specifically a Greek text called the First Alcibiades, it outlines a pretty rigorous education system for Persian princes.
Oh, it was brutal. It wasn't just sit on a cushion. It was a system designed to build a specific type of leader. Until age 7, the boy is raised in the harem, mostly by eunuchs. He's shielded from the world, kept safe.
But at age 7, he gets tossed into the deep end.
Exactly. At 7, he leaves the women and the eunuchs and enters the world of men. He learns to ride and hunt. And for the Persians, riding wasn't just transportation. It was an identity. Being a horse lord was central to their culture.
Then at 14, it shifts again, right?
Yeah, right. At 14, the real education begins. He is assigned 4 specific teachers, all chosen from the highest aristocracy. And I love the breakdown of what they taught because it tells you exactly what the Persians valued in a ruler.
Break it down for us. What are the 4 majors?
The first teacher teaches him to be wise, which effectively means theology, understanding the Zoroastrian religion, the struggle between good and evil, and his duty to the god Ahura Mazda.
So he's a philosopher king in training?
In a way, yes. The second teacher teaches him to be just, specifically to tell the truth.
Truth-telling was a big deal in Persian culture.
Huge. In the inscriptions of Darius and Xerxes, they constantly refer to the lie, or draga, as the ultimate enemy. Lying was considered the worst sin because it destabilizes reality. So a king must speak truth.
Okay, wisdom and justice. What's next?
The third teacher taught him prudence, which means self-control, not being ruled by your appetites. A king cannot be a slave to food, drink, or desire. And the fourth teacher, taught him to be brave.
There's a specific quote about that bravery training that stood out to me in the notes. It felt very modern in a way.
Yes, the teacher taught him that fear, for a Persian, is the equivalent of slavery.
Fear is slavery. That is a heavy mindset to drill into a teenager.
It creates a psychological armor. If you are afraid, you are no better than a servant. You lose your agency. So you must conquer fear to be a master. It explains a lot of his later behavior, doesn't it?
Yeah, you cannot show weakness or you are enslaving yourself.
Exactly. And on top of that moral training, from age 16 or 17, they did 10 years of mandatory national service.
Actual military service.
Yes, actual military service. Physical training, archery, sleeping outdoors, hunting lions. So by the time Xerxes takes the throne at age 32, he is physically hardened, religiously educated, and trained in statecraft. He's not a soft prince.
He's ready. And he needed to be, because the moment he sits on the throne, the empire starts shaking. It's like the subject nations were waiting for Darius to die to see if the new kid was tough.
That is exactly what happened. His father Darius had died right in the middle of preparing to suppress a revolt in Egypt. So Xerxes inherits a war on day 1.
And Egypt isn't a small problem. That's the breadbasket of the empire. You lose Egypt, you lose the grain.
Exactly. And this is where we see Xerxes differ from the party boy image. He doesn't delegate this. He doesn't send a general while he stays in Susa. In January 484 BC, roughly a year after taking the throne, he personally leads the army to Egypt.
He goes himself.
He goes himself. He crushes the revolt swiftly and ruthlessly, and then he installs his own brother, Achaemenid, as the satrap, the governor.
Keeping it in the family.
Always. You trust blood more than you trust bureaucrats. But this diversion to Egypt was costly. It drained resources, and it delayed the plans his father had made for invading Greece.
But first things first.
Right. And once Egypt was handled, a much closer and perhaps more symbolic problem exploded. Babylon.
Babylon, the great city. It feels like Babylon was always revolting against someone in the ancient world.
It was the New York City of antiquity. Massive, wealthy, culturally dominant, and very, very proud. In 484 and 482 BC, 2 different rebel leaders, Bel-Shammani and Shamash-Ereba, seized the city. They were likely angry about tax increases to pay for Xerxes' building projects, or maybe the deportation of their craftsmen.
This leads us to one of the most famous villain Xerxes stories, the story that he hated Babylon so much he melted down their god.
The statue controversy, yes. If you read the later Greek writers like Herodotus or Strabo, they claim Xerxes was so furious at the revolt that he sacked the temples and melted down the massive solid gold statue of Marduk, the patron god of Babylon.
Which sounds like the ultimate sacrilege. I conquered you, and now I'm turning your god into coins. It's a very comic book villain thing to do.
It fits the narrative perfectly, but modern historians are very, very skeptical about this.
Why? Is it just that it sounds too convenient, a little too on the nose?
Well, there's that. But practically speaking, the statue of Marduk was essential for the legitimacy of the ruler of Babylon. The king had to take the hands of Marduk during the New Year festival to be recognized as the rightful king. If you melt the god, you can't be king. It would be shooting yourself in the foot.
So if he didn't melt the god, where did the story come from? Was it just pure propaganda?
It's likely he removed a different statue from the temple complex, maybe a statue of a previous human king or a high priest, something like that. But over time, the story warped into he melted Marduk. However, he did punish them. He did something very subtle but very humiliating.
What was that?
Up until this point, the Persian emperor had the specific title, King of Babylon. It was a way of saying Babylon was special, a separate kingdom held by the emperor, distinct from the rest of the empire.
Right.
Xerxes dropped that title.
He just stopped using it.
He stopped using it. He absorbed Babylon into the main empire and split its massive territory into smaller, boring administrative units.
Wow. So he didn't destroy their god. He did something worse for their ego. He made them irrelevant.
You're just a province now. You're just a zip code.
Exactly. It was a bureaucratic demotion. It shows a cold, calculating administrative mind, not a hot-headed madman. He stripped them of their political identity.
Okay, so he's pacified Egypt with the sword. He's humbled Babylon with the pen. Now he turns his eyes to the big one, the one his father couldn't finish, Greece.
The invasion of Greece. This is the centerpiece of his reign. His father, Darius, had been embarrassed at the Battle of Marathon years earlier. It was a stain on the Achaemenid honor.
And there was pressure on him to fix that.
Oh, immense pressure. He felt a filial duty, and he had his cousin, General Mardonius, whispering in his ear.
Mardonius plays the devil on the shoulder here, doesn't he?
Very much so. Mardonius accused Xerxes of being timid if he didn't attack. And you have to remember the training. Fear is slavery. You can't let your cousin call you a coward in the royal court, so the machine starts turning. We have to talk about the scale of this invasion, because the logistics are mind-boggling for 480 BC. It wasn't just an army, it was a migration.
It was an attempt to overwhelm the world with engineering. He didn't just want to invade, he wanted to change the geography to suit his needs. First, let's talk about the Mount Athos Canal.
This is the peninsula where the Persian fleet had been wrecked by storms years before, right?
Yes. Mount Athos is notorious for bad weather. It's a ship killer. So Xerxes looks at the map and says, we aren't sailing around it, we are going through it.
He digs a canal.
He orders a canal dug through the neck of the peninsula. We're talking about moving tons of earth, employing thousands of laborers for years just to give his ships a safe lane.
That is a massive flex. It's terraforming.
It is. It's a statement. I will reshape the earth to ensure my victory.
But the real showstopper is the Hellespont, the stretch of water separating Asia from Europe.
He wanted to walk his army across the sea, literally. He commissioned 2 bridges made of boats' pontoons. Hundreds of ships lashed together with heavy cables made of flax and papyrus, paved with planks and earth. A bridge between continents.
And this leads to the moment that everyone cites as proof of his insanity, the whipping of the sea.
The infamous whipping. So a storm destroys the first version of the bridge before the army can cross. Xerxes is furious. Herodotus tells us he ordered the Hellespont to be whipped 300 times with chains, and he threw a pair of fetters handcuffs into the water.
I mean, come on. Ordering the ocean to be whipped, that sounds like a toddler having a tantrum, just with more power. Bad water. Bad.
That is certainly how the Greeks framed it.
Yeah.
Look at this barbarian hubris, thinking he can enslave nature. It fits their narrative of the mad despot, but
there's another way to read it.
let's put on our deep dive hat for a second. Think about his army. It isn't just Persians, it's multi-ethnic. You have Egyptians, Phoenicians, people from cultures where rivers and seas were considered deities or spirits. If the sea god just destroyed your bridge, your troops might be terrified. They might think the omens are terrible and refuse to cross.
So Xerxes steps up and says, don't worry about the sea god, I'm the bigger boss.
Exactly. It's performative. He is punishing the unruly element to show his troops that he is the supreme authority. He is demonstrating that even nature is subject to the great king. It's theater for morale.
That makes so much more sense than just he lost his mind. It was a ritual to calm the troops and assert his own divine-like power over the elements.
And it worked. They built the second bridge, and the army crossed.
Let's talk numbers for a second. Herodotus says he marched 1,000,000 men into Greece. That can't be right.
No, it's physically impossible. They would have drunk entire rivers dry. The logistics of feeding 1,000,000 men in 480 BC just didn't exist. Modern estimates put it closer to 60,000 combatants, plus support staff.
Still huge. A massive force for the time.
Oh, massive. It was a moving city. And at the core of that city were the Immortals.
The best brand name in military history.
It really is. The 10,000 elite shock troops. The branding was brilliant. If one died, another immediately stepped into his place, so the unit always appeared to be at full strength. To the enemy, it looked like they couldn't be killed.
So this massive steamroller hits Greece. We know about Thermopylae, the 300 Spartans, Leonidas. We don't need to retell the movie scene by scene. But the key takeaway there for Xerxes wasn't the fighting, it was the intelligence, right?
Right. From Xerxes' perspective, Thermopylae was a traffic jam. He waited for days, assuming the Greeks would run away when they saw his numbers. When they didn't, he got frustrated. But he didn't win Thermopylae by just overpowering them. He won because a local Greek, Ephialtes, showed him the path around the mountain.
Which the Greeks called the trail, and Xerxes probably called good reconnaissance.
Exactly. Xerxes was pragmatic. He took the win and kept moving. And this is the part people forget because of how the war ends. He actually achieved his primary goal.
What was the goal?
To punish Athens. To burn it. And he did. He marched into Athens. The people had fled to the island of Salamis, but the city was there for the taking. He burned the Acropolis. He destroyed the Temple of Athena.
Is there proof of this, or is it just a story the Greeks told to make him look bad?
Oh, there is proof. Archaeologists call it the Persepolis, the Persian debris. It's a layer of destruction in Athens that dates precisely to 480 BC. Broken statues, scorched stones. When they excavated the Acropolis, they found the statues the Persians knocked over buried in the ground. He literally left a scar on the city that defines archaeology there today.
So he wins. He's standing in the ashes of his enemy's capital. He has avenged his father. Why didn't he just go home?
Hubris, or maybe bad advice. The Athenian fleet was still intact nearby at Salamis. And Xerxes was advised by Queen Artemisia, the only female commander in his navy, by the way.
She's a fascinating character.
Absolutely. A ruler in her own right from Halicarnassus. And she told him, "You have the city. You have won. Don't fight them at sea. The Greeks are better sailors. Just wait them out. They are trapped on an island with no food. They will scatter."
That sounds like solid, prudent advice.
It was perfect advice. But Xerxes wanted the knockout blow. He wanted to crush them completely. And he fell for a trap set by the Athenian leader, Themistocles, who sent a fake message saying the Greeks were panicking and trying to escape.
And Xerxes took the bait.
He took the bait. He sent his massive fleet into the narrow straits of Salamis. And just like at Thermopylae, the terrain mattered. In the open ocean, the Persian numbers were an advantage. In the narrow straits, they were a liability. The ships were tripping over each other. The smaller, more agile Greek triremes tore them apart.
And Xerxes is watching this from a throne set up on a hill, just watching his navy get decimated.
Watching his fleet be destroyed. And suddenly, the strategic situation flips. If the Greeks control the sea, they can sail to the Hellespont and destroy that bridge of boats.
And if the bridge is gone,
Xerxes and his army are trapped in Europe, cut off from supply lines, in hostile territory. It's a nightmare scenario.
so the retreat begins.
He makes the calculated decision to retreat. He takes the bulk of the army back to Asia to protect the emperor's person himself and to ensure the bridge is held. He leaves Mardonius behind with a smaller force to try and hold the territory.
Which didn't go well for Mardonius.
No, Mardonius gets killed the next year at the Battle of Plataea, and that's it. The Persian invasion is over.
It's treated as this huge humiliation in Western history books, the salvation of Western civilization. But from Xerxes' perspective, was it a total failure? He did what he set out to do.
That's the nuance we need to see. No, it wasn't a total failure. He burned Athens. He punished the people who insulted his father. He looted the temples. He expanded the empire's borders firmly into Thrace and Macedonia. He went home and told his people, "I conquered. I punished the wicked Greeks." And because he controlled the propaganda, that became the official story in Persia.
He spun the narrative. Mission accomplished.
And honestly, he never went back to war. After 479 BC, the warrior king retires, and a new figure emerges, the builder king.
Let's talk about that, because when he gets back to Persia, he doesn't sulk. He starts building on a scale that dwarfs even his father.
He focuses on Persepolis, the ceremonial capital. He wants to turn it into a wonder of the world. His palace was twice the size of his father's.
What are some of the highlights of his construction phase?
The Gate of All Nations.
Yeah.
Just the name tells you the ambition. It was a colossal entry point with giant winged bulls lamassu. The idea was that dignitaries from India, Africa, and Europe would walk through this gate and feel physically small. They would feel the weight of the empire before they even saw the king.
And the Hall of 100 Columns.
Yes, one of the largest rooms in the ancient world. And we have to remember, these weren't bare stone ruins like we see today in museums.
Right, we picture them as beige and dusty.
They were Technicolor. We're talking glazed bricks in bright blues, yellows, and greens, lapis lazuli, gold plating on a wall, cedar wood from Lebanon. It was a sensory overload of wealth. It was his way of saying, I may have lost a naval battle in Greece, but look at this. Who is the real master of the world?
It's projecting power through architecture. A very loud, very expensive message.
Exactly. He's saying my resources are infinite. It's a very effective way to keep the nobles in line and the tributaries paying up.
But while he is building these beautiful palaces, the atmosphere inside the palace starts to get dark. We're entering the final act of Xerxes' life, and it feels like a conspiracy thriller.
It really does. The last years of his reign, starting around 465 BC, are murky. We see famine in the empire, we see economic trouble, the grain prices are spiking, and inside the court, the sharks are circling.
Introduce us to the villain of this final act.
Artabanus. Not to be confused with the brother Artaban. Artabanus was the commander of the royal bodyguard. He was a Hyrcanian. This is the guy trusted with the king's safety, the most powerful official in the court. He had risen through religious connections and harem politics. And in August of 465 BC, he decides to make a move.
How does it go down?
It's brutal. With the help of a eunuch named Achaemenid, Artabanus assassinates Xerxes in his bedchamber.
Just like that. The king of kings, ruler of millions, the man who whipped the sea, stabbed in his own bedroom.
It's a quiet and glorious end. But Artabanus doesn't stop there. This is where it gets confusing, the whodunit aspect. He has killed the king, but he needs a cover story. We have a couple of versions of this from ancient historians, but the most dramatic one comes from Ctesias.
What does Ctesias say happened?
He says Artabanus went to Xerxes' younger son, Artaxerxes, and told him, your older brother, the crown prince Darius, has murdered your father to seize the throne.
He frames the crown prince.
Exactly. He plays on the younger brother's fear and ambition. He tells Artaxerxes, he killed father, and you are next. So Artaxerxes, blinded by rage and grief, goes and executes his own brother, Darius.
So Artabanus manages to wipe out the king in the air in one swoop, using the spear as the weapon.
It's Machiavellian. It's Game of Thrones long before George R.R. Martin. Eventually, the truth comes out, and Artaxerxes realizes he's been played. He kills Artabanus in a violent struggle, but the damage is done. Xerxes is dead, his eldest son is dead, and the empire is in chaos.
It's a tragic end. You start with that high-minded education, truth is justice, fear is slavery, and you end up being stabbed in the dark by your own bodyguard, leaving a legacy of family kinslaying.
It is. And that instability nearly broke the empire. It was only saved because a general named Megabyzus decided to switch sides and support the Achaemenids against the conspirators. But this moment marked a shift. The Persian Empire became less about the warrior king on the battlefield and more about harem intrigues and court politics.
So Xerxes is gone, but his image takes on a life of its own that has very little to do with the actual man.
Almost immediately, the Greeks control the narrative. Aeschylus writes the play The Persians just 7 years after the invasion. It's the oldest surviving play in history. And in it, he paints Xerxes as this effeminate, emotional, incompetent despot who cries and rips his clothes.
And that stuck. That became the version of Xerxes that the West inherited.
It stuck hard. It became the template. Herodotus picked it up. Later, Roman writers picked it up. And then we had the biblical connection.
The Book of Esther.
Right. Xerxes is widely identified as King Ahasuerus in the Bible. The king who banishes his first wife, holds a massive drinking party, marries Esther, and ultimately saves the Jewish people from a plot to destroy them.
Is that historically accurate? Did he marry an Esther?
That is a subject of fierce debate. Many scholars consider the Book of Esther to be a historical romance, a fictional story set in a real historical setting. We don't have Persian records of a Queen Esther. We know his chief wife was Amestris, who was a powerful figure in her own right.
But the characterization fits.
Well, the character of Ahasuerus, wealthy, powerful, a bit temperamental, susceptible to advice from his courtiers, it fits the vibe of the Xerxes the Greeks described.
And then fast forward a few thousand years, and we have Handel writing an opera about him.
Circe, which opens with one of the most famous arias in opera history, Ombra mai fu.
Isn't that the one where he sings a love song to a tree?
It is. He is singing about how much he loves the shade of a plane tree.
Yeah.
It's actually quite beautiful music, but again, it paints him as this whimsical, slightly detached figure, not a battlefield commander.
And finally, we land on Frank Miller and 300, the giant with the nose ring chain.
The ultimate distortion.
Yeah.
And you know, that movie really angered people in Iran. They saw it as an insult to their heritage, reducing a complex geopolitical ruler, a man who built laws and roads and cities, to a grotesque monster.
So let's wrap this up. We've unpacked his life. We've seen the born in the Purple Prince, the ruthless general, the bridge builder, the sea whipper, and the assassination victim. When you step back and look at the whole picture, was he mad? Or was he just a guy with a really, really difficult job?
I think mad is the lazy answer. It's the easy answer the Greeks gave us. But when you look at the whipping of the sea, the burning of Athens, the massive gates at Persepolis, it wasn't insanity, it was performance.
Performance of power.
Exactly. He ruled a massive, fracturing, multi-ethnic empire that was constantly trying to pull itself apart. He had to be larger than life, he had to be terrifying to the elements and ruthless to rebels, he had to be wealthier than imagination. It was a calculated political strategy to hold it all together.
So the God King thing wasn't because he delusionally thought he was a god, but because he needed his subjects to believe he was untouchable.
Precisely. And for the most part, it worked. The empire survived him for another 130 years. He maintained the structure his father built. He wasn't the failure the Greeks painted him to be. He was a stabilizer who perhaps flew a little too close to the sun in Greece.
That is a fascinating shift in perspective. Not a monster, but a man playing a monstrously difficult role.
If you ever get the chance to see photos of the ruins of Persepolis, look at the Gate of All Nations. You can still see the ambition there. It's the other side of the story, carved in stone.
I love that. A calculated ruler using performative cruelty. Definitely something to chew on the next time you watch 300.
That's it for this deep dive into Xerxes I. We hope you learned something new about the man behind the myth. Thanks for listening.